But at this price point, $500 to $700, you're not going to find anything better right now.
Easily. This blows everything away with. There's nothing else. I don't think there's ever been a laptop this nice at that price category ever. Like from a build quality perspective, just pure build quality. We're not talking about Mac OS. We're not talking about the bias that comes with Apple. Because there, like you said, we are biased. Like whoever says that they're not, and if you're in this space, yes, we prefer Apple products. Like clearly,
absolutely.
Like, so what do you think about the name, Neo?
I've been thinking about it, and I have no idea why they decided to call it Neo. It doesn't like follow any Apple lore. It doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't make sense with anything else unless you have some sort of Easter egg that I don't know about. Neo just seems very random, in my opinion.
Neo means new, so
okay.
I guess that's kind of, or it could also mean someone, I saw this, I don't know where, but they said new educational offering, which is kind of funny.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't think that's what it means, but I mean, that is funny.
And I mean, I saw people draw like the Matrix comparisons or like, like Neo, the name, but yeah, it's kind of random. But if it does mean new, it's not a new product category, but it's a brand new product in the MacBook category for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, very, very long time. I mean, when was the last time we had a new, like...
MacBook?
MacBook was the last one, and that's been since discontinued. And this is not a replacement for the MacBook, though.
It is not a replacement for the MacBook. Because, the MacBook back then, it was like $1,300, right? Starting? So it was expensive, for how low power it was, but it was a beautiful device, like we've spoken about in the past.
Yeah.
But this is let us know, or let the people know, like, what this MacBook Neo is, and like give me like a short 30-second synopsis.
It is a budget entry-level computer that Apple has never made before. Like they've never made a budget MacBook before. This is the very first time they've done so. The MacBook Air is not really a budget machine. I mean, yeah, they have cheaper offerings, but when you're like below $500 for educational, that is legitimately budget. And they didn't really make too many like audacious compromises. There are compromises, of course, but it's pretty impressive what they've been able to offer. Like if I was looking for a new laptop today, and I only had $600 to spend, there's no question that this would be the laptop I get. Like the others wouldn't even be in the equation. Like this is so much better.
Not even from like a biased outlook, because we tend to gravitate that way. But like if you look at the Windows or Chromebook landscape, even just from like what they look like and feel like in build material wise, they're gonna feel cheap. They're gonna be made out of plastic. It's gonna be rickety. You know what I mean? Like you move it around, you think something's gonna crack. So it is impressive that Apple at $600 or $500, like you said, education discount, made a MacBook that still fits that Apple aesthetic of premium feel, aluminum build, high quality display and things like that.
Yeah, like even granted, I have not gone hands on with it, but we've seen pictures, we've seen videos. Those Windows laptops, they all seem rickety. They creak like when you press them, like the plastic like molds and morphs when you press the plastic, and you can hear it. You can hear it when you move it. It's like like it's this is not that. This is actual aluminum, and the build quality is going to feel fantastic, hands down.
Yeah. So I mean, at $600, like you said, it's a no-brainer. I'm walking in, I'm seeing this thing, and I'm like, I'm gonna get that one. I'm getting the MacBook Neo, even if I'm not a MacBook user or a Mac user to begin with.
Yes.
And I do think Apple has, I mean, I guess they haven't like completely obliterated the Chromebook and Windows like cheaper market, because there are some cheaper ones. I think you can there's Chromebooks for like $300 out there probably, but at this price point, $500 to $700, you're not going to find anything better right now.
Easily. This blows everything away with. There's nothing else. I don't think there's ever been a laptop this nice at that price category ever. Like from a build quality perspective, just pure build quality. We're not talking about Mac OS. We're not talking about the bias that comes with Apple. Because there, like you said, we are biased. Like whoever says that they're not, and if you're in this space, yes, we prefer Apple products, like clearly.
Absolutely.
However, we're also not stupid. Like we can be objective and look at this from an objective point of view. But that being said, there is nothing that has ever been released at this price point that is, and we're talking about $26 as well. So
yeah, exactly.
Like this is a pretty remarkable feat that what Apple has been able to pull off with this.
I mean, I 100% agree. But you mentioned earlier, so of course there had to be some compromises. I mean, walk me through a little bit of what Apple did here in terms of how did they get down to $600? Because the next level up, especially now, is $1,100 for the MacBook Air. So that's a big delta. It's not like, and that's another thing we can talk about, the Apple price ladder. But talk to me a little bit about what you're getting in this MacBook Neo and why it is $600.
It starts with the chip. Like it's the A18 chip from. I mean, we all have them some of us have them. Some of us have actually surpassed. I did not upgrade to the latest iPhone this last upgrade cycle. I'm still rocking the iPhone 16 Pro Max. This has the same exact chip in it that the MacBook Neo has. So I'm walking around with a MacBook Neo in my pocket, more or less. Mm-hmm. And that's where they're able to gain a lot of the cost savings. They're not using the latest chips. They're not using an M series chip or one of the newer chips. So they're using something they already have probably plenty of, right? I mean, because these things, the ones that didn't sell or they just have plenty of stock of, and they're going to need it because these things are going to sell like crazy. So that's where it starts.
Imagine like the economy of scale in that thing, because like iPhones are by far their biggest selling volume-wise product. So like you said, they probably have so many A18 Pro chips left over, and now they're throwing it into another product that's going to sell like hotcakes. So they're going to get that A18 Pro or just any other like A series chip as it moves forward to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, which I think is cool.
Yeah. It's so that's where it starts, and then there's other things like there's only 8 gigabytes of RAM. We know RAM prices are crazy these days, so there's only 8 gigabytes of memory. Right? There's not a bunch of build-to-order configurations. There's basically 2 different configurations you can choose from. So in that way, they've also cut down just the economics of it all to make it a cheaper product. There's no force touch trackpad. So you still get all your gestures and everything, but there's no longer that trackpad that doesn't move when the power's off. So this thing will always click. You can click anywhere on it, but it is not the same type of trackpad as we have on the MacBook Air, MacBook Pro.
Agreed.
Yeah, so those are some of the main ways that Apple has reduced price. And there's other ways, no doubt internally, once these things are torn down, you're going to see a lot of ways that they are able to save money. But yeah, those are some of the biggest ways. What other things do we have? Because there's still other compromises there as well. Well, one of the biggest, USB, right? There's no MagSafe.
USB, no MagSafe. 2 different USB-C ports, which is interesting. I didn't, that wasn't on my bingo card. So they have the one faster one, which is a USB 3 controller, which is what's in the 16 Pro, like you said, the 16 Pro and Pro Max. So that's 10 gigabytes per second transfer speeds. But then you have the slower USB 2 controller, which is what the regular iPhones have. So one is going to be used mostly for data. They both charge. We're not 100% sure what the charging speeds are yet. Until we get them in their hands, we'll test that out. But 2 USB-C ports, no MagSafe, and 1 headphone jack.
Yeah.
Courage.
And some people were like, oh, what is Apple? They ripped us off. There's only 2 USB-C ports, and there's one of them is a slow port. Mm-hmm. Folks, do you realize that the A18 chip had one USB controller, one USB 3 controller with 10 gigabits per second. So the fact that they were able to add a second USB port, it's actually pretty impressive. Even though it's slower, even though it's USB 2, it's still impressive.
And also, like, what do you expect? A Thunderbolt 4 port, Thunderbolt 5 port? A Thunderbolt 5 cable is $120 by itself right now. You know what I mean? Like, what do you expect to have in a $600 machine? Yeah, that's like. There's no other $600 machine that's got a Thunderbolt port to begin with. So I think USB 3 ports are going to be fine, or USB-C or USB 3 port singular is going to be good enough for this use case.
Yeah, and it's actually like to be honest, I wasn't expecting it to have. I think I mentioned in the last episode, I was thinking maybe just one USB port. Then you said, no, there's got to be 2, and I was like, yeah, there has to be 2. But
Yeah.
The fact that they were able to pull this off is still impressive, and it's better than the old MacBook because that only had one port, right?
Yeah, at one single port, and that was your data port, your charging port, your audio, your everything port. And again, I remember we mentioned it was at a time where USB-C was still foreign, especially to Apple users. You know, if you were an Android user, you were exposed to it a little bit, but back then it was a big shock to people that were like, "Wait, I can't charge and plug in a USB-C stick, and I gotta get an adapter, and I gotta get a dongle. What is this?" So it is, technically you get more out of this one 10 years later, 11 years later, and for half the price.
Yeah. And it means you can charge your MacBook Neo and still have connectivity to an external display. Or, well, if you have it connected to an external display, it's going to charge anyway. I would assume there's power delivery.
Yeah.
But if you could have it connected to a USB drive and still be charging, or an external SSD and still be charging, whereas you couldn't do that on the old MacBook. So that's a very, very nice update and inclusion.
And what was cool is that they actually, again, going back to the build quality and the things that make an Apple laptop a MacBook, like they kept the display pretty high end and pretty on par with the rest of the MacBook lineup. Like it's the same brightness as the MacBook Air, the same PPI. Oh no, well the same PPI as like the Studio display. It's still Liquid Retina. And you're giving up True Tone, which is, depending on who you are, you might use it. You might not know if you use it or not because it's kind of just a setting in the display settings. But the display is another thing that I thought Apple would really tone down and compromise on, but they really didn't, which is cool.
Yeah, there are some compromises, but like you said, this is by far the best display you're going to get at this price point. Like, have you used a Windows laptop or a Chromebook and compared the displays to an Apple display? It's not even close.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's terrible, right? And this is a glossy display. Usually those laptops have those little matte displays, which aren't really super ideal, in my opinion. But it doesn't have P3 support, which is no real big deal, in my opinion, because, I mean, generally speaking, you're probably not going to be like editing high-end video on this, where P3 would come into play there. I mean, obviously that would be nice, but I don't think that's a huge loss. And that's another way that Apple was able to get the price down for the MacBook Neo.
And again, I don't think the person that's going in to buy this, they're not worried about P3 color gamut. They're not worried. They're like, they're not worried about the number of bright, like nits of brightness. They're just like, can I see it indoors? All right, cool. This is a good enough display. And like if you do hold them side by side in an Apple store next to a MacBook Air or something like that, most people are just, it kind of just looks the same. Maybe it's just a little bit smaller because it is technically 13 inches versus 13.6. But outside of that, the display for the target customer is going to exceed expectations, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think so as well. It's going to be a huge, it's going to be for someone who is used to like Windows laptops and Chromebooks and who's thinking about, I might check out the MacBook Neo. They're going to be blown away by the quality of this thing. Like, and even though it is lesser than what we'd expect from a MacBook Air, it's still a huge step above what we see at that price point from other competitors.
So I actually think, speaking of competitors, if you want to get into this conversation, I think it's actually competing more so against itself internally with other Apple products, in my opinion. That's what this MacBook Neo is doing. Right? First off, the price point, I really thought with the increased price of the MacBook Air, I thought Apple was going to bring the MacBook Neo in at like $799.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was like, they can't give you that big of a gap, right? Because they, Apple's famous price ladder, like, let me just upgrade here. Oh, wait, only $100 more. Let me get to the next one, and to the next one. But this is in reality like a standalone $500-$600 machine. There's a $500 price delta to the next one. So this is kind of in that iPad Air entry-level iPad price category, and it's just interesting. And I have a lot of thoughts on how Apple's positioning this computer compared to the rest of its products. With somebody walking into an Apple store, I got $600-$700. I need a computer. What am I getting? Right. So I mean, it's just interesting how Apple's kind of doing this with that price, and the price is kind of one of the biggest, I guess, features of this product, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, for sure. Like that's a great, and coming from you as someone who is like used iPad famously for everything. I'm really interested to hear your perspective on that. Like, as someone, if someone was walking into the Apple store, they saw an iPad Air. Like, once you buy an iPad Air, first of all, how much does the iPad Air start at? What's the starting price for that? It's like $599, right?
Yeah, $600.
Okay.
Just for the iPad Air.
For the iPad Air. So
no keyboard, no pencil.
Yes. So same price as the MacBook Neo, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you need to add a keyboard to that,
which is $330, right? I think it's technically a little cheaper than the Pro version, but yeah, $330 for
the nicest keyboard.
A keyboard. Yeah.
I mean, you can get cheaper keyboards, obviously, but if you want the Apple Magic Keyboard, it's going to cost you, right? So.
And then you got the Pencil Pro. Is that still $130, maybe $120, right? If you want to get into the iPad sketching thing, now you're at $1,000. You're at $1,050. You're closer to the MacBook Air than you are to the MacBook Neo at that price point, And there is something to say about it having an M4 chip, and sure, Geekbench scores and raw power will kind of lean towards the iPad, but from a practicality sense, if you're looking for a computer experience and you don't want to go through the workarounds and try to push to the limits and deal with some limitations on the OS side, I mean, MacBook Neo is a full Mac OS experience at $600.
Yes, it is. It's very interesting. Like, to me, there's no question which one I would pick. Like, it's just it's a no-brainer. You would go with the MacBook Neo if it's between the iPad Air and a keyboard versus the MacBook Neo. You go with the MacBook Neo. It has the keyboard built in. It has the nice trackpad. It has a nice display. It has Mac OS, most importantly. So you're not trying to run through all these jump through all these hoops to be able to do the same thing you could do on the MacBook Neo with the iPad. Just no question that is what I would recommend in that situation.
And I think it's maybe even a closer comparison would maybe be the A16 iPad, just because it has also a mobile chip in it. And when you add the keyboard to that and the pencil, that's closer to that $600 price point. And I think the target demo of like education and quick and fast computer experience and needs and productivity, maybe that's the better comparison. But even then, it's just like, it's a no-brainer. $600 MacBook Neo, better chipset, A18 Pro, comes with a keyboard and the trackpad already in place and things like that. So I do think, and we were talking about this before, I do think this is going to, yes, overall probably lower iPad sales, but it is going to kind of like let the iPad be an iPad at the end of the day. And it'll be a tablet first, second, and third now, as opposed to being like a tablet and a computer. And then maybe on the off chance that you kind of need some floating windows with iPadOS 26, you'll be able to do that on your iPad. But now it's like, if I'm looking for a tablet and I'm looking for an iPad, I'm going to get an iPad. Most people now, I mean, most people weren't to begin with, but now it's like, all right, I'm not going to force an iPad to be a computer. I'm just going to get a MacBook Neo.
Yes.
Right? And if I want an iPad, I'll get an iPad.
Yeah. And this is in no way is saying that the iPad is somehow obsolete or made invalid by the MacBook Neo. That is not what we're saying at all. No. We're just saying now it's more, you have a choice as to whether you want an iPad and to use it as a tablet, like the way it was meant, and not try to shoehorn it into being a Mac. Now you have the option to actually get a Mac in that same price range and have it actually be a Mac. You're not trying to jump through all these hoops like you were saying. But I still think the iPad is totally a viable product. Like the MacBook Neo you cannot just hold it in your hand and manipulate it like you can an iPad.
No, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of just like let the iPad be the iPad, I guess, at this point. And then MacBook Neo be the entry-level MacBook for most people. And like you said, the iPad is still more versatile. It's a tablet. It's got the pencil support. It's got touch support and things like that. So there's definitely use cases for it. It's still like, give it to your kid, the content consumption machine. It's still the in the medical field as a pilot. It's still the sketchboard, the physical note-taking device. All things that Mac still can't do. Right?
Ergonomically speaking, right. Yeah, like from an ergonomic standpoint, Macs cannot compete with the iPad in that way, because there's just things you can do. Like, I could just grab this tablet. I could not do this and be using this. I couldn't do that with a MacBook. So it's not, We joke about this being the MacBook Neo being an iPad killer, but in reality, it's just more of a choice that it gives the user.
Yeah. And if anything, it's kind of like it's going to supplement your Mac experience that much more. And like I kind of noticed that with Apple's marketing material in their ad. They talked about that like 3-minute ad that they had, the video. Yeah, they mentioned the Neo and they showed off all the things that it can do, but they were big on the ecosystem stuff.
Yeah, yep.
It was like they were talking about continuity and handoff and like starting one thing on your phone and starting it or ending it on the MacBook. And they made the Apple ecosystem a feature of the MacBook Neo, which is the first. I'm not gonna say the first time they've done that, but it's like the first time they've truly emphasized it as like a feature of the MacBook, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, just think of all the stuff that's been sort of gatekept away from ones who just didn't have the circumstances or didn't want to pay that much money to get in that ecosystem fully. Maybe they already have an iPhone. I know plenty of people with iPhones that have like Windows tablets or cheaper laptops and stuff like that because they just don't want to pay the premium. Not completely understand that. But now this gives them the choice, and now they get to benefit too from that ecosystem, like having your AirPods automatically switch between devices, being able to have continuity. You had a great video on that recently. We'll have it linked here that you can check that out. So there's a lot of advantages to that ecosystem and the continuity between all the various devices. And I think this is actually going to help Apple sell more product, even though it's a lesser price. They're still going to be able to benefit from that.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You can get a MacBook Neo and an entry-level iPad for less than a MacBook Air and experience a lot of the ecosystem moments, kind of get the best of both worlds, have all the versatility you want, use your iPad with Sidecar, it's just like it does from an accessibility standpoint, from a price accessibility standpoint, it just kind of really, it allows people to get into the Apple ecosystem for a much cheaper price and a much easier way to get into it and kind of get, let Apple get their hooks in there a little bit. But like you said, everybody's got it, not everybody, but most people, their starting Apple ecosystem thing is an iPhone. They get it from their carrier. They get it for basically free if you're just paying your cell bill. So now adding the MacBook experience really will tie everything in and allow people to experience what the ecosystem and what the walled garden really is.
Yeah, and in retrospect, like I know we talked about cellular last time, and he's fucking. I think that was kind of a miss on my part, because, like obviously this won't have cellular. Like,
I mean, it's not obvious.
Really?
Because I mean, you can put a cellular on the A16 iPad.
That's true. Yeah, good point.
Good point. And it's an A18 Pro, which is a cell phone chip. So I guess I'm not surprised, but I wouldn't have been surprised if they added it as an add-on. Like let it go, like that be the third configuration, like add $200 to add 4G or 5G onto it. Which I mean, maybe eventually they could.
I think they could, but I mean that seems like more with an iPad. I don't know. I just feel like there's differences in use cases to whereas with the laptop, it's always been like, yeah, you travel with your laptop, obviously, but it's the Wi-Fi machine. Like it's for you connect with Wi-Fi. Whereas the iPad has always been this like on the go, take it to the coffee shop, take it out with you, use it anywhere sort of device. And ergonomically, it kind of helps that situation. I don't know. Like I almost feel like the marketing would have been negatively affected if there were higher price tiers. I think Apple purposely kept the price tiers to 2 specific tiers just for the mental, like the perception of this being a budget affordable device. Whereas when you start adding other add-ons like that, they're entry level version, but then it starts getting like from just being able to, like, it kind of makes you feel bad if you can't get the full version. You know what I'm saying?
No, that makes complete sense, because it's I mean, you made it. It's a perfectly good example, like you said. It's like it's clear what this computer is. It is a budget-friendly Mac to get into the Mac ecosystem, because, like you said, once you get to the MacBook Airs, then you start going to the price ladder. It's like you're not even close to the ladder on the MacBook Neo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like you have the M5, then it gets a little bit more confusing if you add a little bit more RAM, and what's the M5 Pro, and that now M5 Max, and like now you're in the MacBook Pro and 14-inch, 16-inch versus here. There's not a lot of options. There's no indecision because there's only one decision to make. And you're just like, all right, I need a cheap MacBook. This is the one I'm going with. I'm not going to confuse myself with everything else that's above it. You know?
Yeah. So, and speaking
it makes sense.
And then there's the Touch ID option. So if you want Touch ID, which like if you're in an educational field, that's probably not even really worth it, because like if you're sharing this laptop with other like 10 other people, it's like okay, it kind of is pointless in that respect. So then they gave you the option of Touch ID, so that allowed them to make a cheaper version. But then if you wanted Touch ID, they would throw in another little bit of storage for you, so you can go from 256 to 512. So
and then also if you don't get the Touch ID, you can get some more Apple ecosystem moments if you got an Apple Watch. You know, it can unlock for you. You know, there's a bunch of stuff that can happen. But it is interesting that I think you're right. I didn't look at it from an education standpoint, because I do remember just like sharing Chromebooks and every student had like their own login for whatever was going on. So yeah, I mean, Touch ID is definitely not needed. If it's a cost saver in the education space, then it makes sense that it's not there. I was a little weird. I was like, why do they not have it on there? It can't be that expensive to have a Touch ID sensor. But
yeah. But then you're talking about economies of scale as well. Like you have 1 million Touch ID sensors. That's a pretty significant amount of coin that they're saving there. They're able to pass on to the customer. I don't know. I'm interested to hear what like the delta is, the price, like how much are the margins for this thing? Because they exist. There's still going to be some decent margins here. Maybe not as much as with the MacBook Air or some of the higher end versions, but there's definitely still. I would love to hear the build of materials, like the cost of making one of these.
I wouldn't be surprised, and not to get like nerdy in terms of like what's about to like how they thought about it from a business perspective. This could be like a loss leader. I don't think they're losing money on each one of them, but I think it's like a way to get it's like a cheaper way to acquire more customers, get them into the Apple ecosystem, and then also get them to pay for services on top of that, right? The iClouds of the world, the Apple Premiums of the world, the whatever else that Apple wants to like upsell you on and get you involved. So I just think, Apple they already have the market of people willing to spend $1,000+ on a laptop. Now let's get that other market, which is like the people that are spending $600 to $800 on a laptop. And then I could see it trickling even further down at some point in like 10 years. So I could see Apple not making a ton of money on each individual sale, but long term, they're going to be making a lot of money on those people, which is ultimately what they want.
Yeah. Well, one thing we know for sure is this is not a loss leader. We know for a fact that they are making something off these things. It may not be a lot, but they're not losing 1 cent on these. You can guarantee that as long as Tim Cook is still at the helm. True. There's no way.
That's so true.
But to your point, it definitely is. They're probably not making a ton of margin on these. Mm-hmm. And I think it's overall, I'm very, very impressed with it.
So for you, being Jeff Benjamin, 9to5 Mac, you use all the best of the best. Do you see a world where you have this computer and you're using it?
Yes.
And what does that look like?
So here's the thing. This is not a MacBook replacement, as we already discussed. So I talked last episode how I love the MacBook, how it's really super thin. I could put it in the back of my seat and not warp my seats. This thing is actually just as, maybe even a little bit thicker than the MacBook Air, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a little thick. It's the same weight and a tiny bit thicker.
Yeah. So this is not this. The MacBook Air still lives up to its name. It is still the lightweight as far as the thinness of the Mac portfolio. This comes close, but it is nowhere near the MacBook, the original, like the 12-inch MacBook. That thing was on a thinness level that we haven't seen since. Yeah. So that was one of the reasons I love that machine. But for this, I feel like I don't know if everyone's like this, but with my MacBooks, I hate to have them in precarious situations, or I'm really, really particular about not dinging them or not abusing them, or just I'm always like really cautious. And I feel like that limits my willingness to be able to take them in specific situations or in certain locations. Whereas with the MacBook, I feel like it's kind of like the do everything. Like I could just take it wherever, I can have it wherever, and I wouldn't feel as guilty or feel like overly protective of trying not to mess it up because it costs so much.
So would you say that the way that you use your iPad, it's going to replace that for you?
I could definitely see that. I could definitely see like, all right, so I was just curious. I went to Apple's trade-in little thing to see when I was going through the checkout process for the Neo, and I said, hey, let me just see how much they'll offer me for the iPad Pro. And it was like $690, I think.
Which one do you have?
Not the latest, but the one before that. Is it M4?
Okay. M4 iPad Pro.
Yeah. So it was like 690, 670, something like that. So that would pay for the MacBook Neo with something to spare.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Do I really, like we mentioned, the Neo is not an iPad replacement per se, because there's things you can do with an iPad that you can't do with a MacBook. So I was thinking if I did do that, I would just probably downgrade to like the entry level, like the regular iPad.
Okay.
And then just have the Neo as my do everything, take it anywhere sort of device. But I don't know, still up in the air.
So it's funny you mentioned the not wanting to bring your MacBook Pro in precarious situations, because I mean like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I picked up the M5 MacBook Pro, which is probably not the best timing now that the M5 Pro and M5 Max are out, but that's to each their own. But yeah, it's interesting. I thought that I would want to bring it with me places, and I don't really want to. I don't know if it's because it's a little heavier than I would want it to be, or I don't know what it is about it, even though it is a laptop, and I have the smaller 14-inch one. There's something about it that doesn't make it as portable as I want it to. Maybe it's because I have it connected to a hub, and the hub has a bunch of SSDs, and I don't want to unplug the one wire and have like, oh, you ejected it incorrectly, and da-da-da-da. Maybe that has something to do with it, a little bit of friction there for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't wanted to take the laptop out of the house on the go. Whereas like the iPad, I'll throw it in my bag. Even though I have the expensive iPad Pro, I'll just throw it in my bag, no big deal, and take it wherever I want to take it.
Yeah.
So I see that situation where you feel less bad, less guilty, or bringing a MacBook Neo around. You're okay if that gets dinged up a little bit because it is, I'm going to say only in quotes because, of course, it's all relative, but it's like $600 compared to the $2,500 to $3,000 that you spend on your MacBook Pro. So I see that scenario where it's like my lesser laptop I'll bring with me on the go, but my bigger laptop that I kind of use as a desktop stays at home.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, yeah, I don't know. I honestly, realistically, I don't need a Neo. Like, clearly, right? Like,
I mean, neither do I.
I don't need that, but it's just very interesting. It's just an interesting product, and I just want to use it just to see what it's like to have an iPhone chip running Mac OS. Like, what are some limitations? I want to see like what this thing can do, what it can't do. Like, will it be able to run Rosetta? Like, because that's an interesting question as well. Like, will this be able to like run
port over the apps? You're saying?
Yeah,
like to ARM apps.
Well, here's the thing. Like, we know Apple is looking to sunset Rosetta in 2027 because of what we saw at macOS 26.4 beta. Like, there's a message there that says, basically, more or less, we are eliminating support for Rosetta in the future. So you probably want to go ahead and get all your Macs.
Wait, do you still have apps that aren't M powered optimized or like M chip powered optimized?
Very few. Like, there are a few that I have that so like, for instance, when I reinstall Mac OS, like, I'll be using Mac OS for a long time, and then I download an app, and then it's like Rosetta needs to install. I'm like, oh, Rosetta hadn't installed this whole time, and now I'm using an app that still needs to be emulated, basically. It's very few and far between, but there are some cases where I do need that. So I'm curious, will this have support for Rosetta? So that's one of the first things I would want to check on that. And yeah, I don't know.
No, I mean, I agree. I'm also very curious to know what the like software Mac OS limitations are going to be. Like at one point, is it going to stutter? Like I know obviously it's going to be able to do iMessage and Slack, and they even put up like the Microsoft Office apps that they showed in the little ad. So like they know that people are going to be using it for PowerPoint and Word and Excel. But yeah, I'm very curious to know like where is it going to not be able to handle. Like I'm sure you can install Final Cut Pro on here. I'm sure part of Creator Studio, it'll physically go on your device, but what's that experience going to be like? Right?
I'm pretty sure
if that is something that you want.
I'm sure it'll be fine. Like I mean, think about
right.
this.
That's right. I think it'll be fine. Also, like sure, like exporting it was going to take longer, of course, than the M series ones, but like I'm sure it won't. I'm sure you'll be able to edit your 4K footage, a couple lines of Final Cut Pro audio, video. Like you'll be fine. I think.
Yeah, you can edit 4K footage on your iPhone 16 Pro today. You can edit 4K footage on the iPhone 14. Like we've been doing this for a while now. That shouldn't be a surprise. At least I don't think that the MacBook Neo will be able to handle Final Cut Pro. Will you be able to shoot and edit 8K footage? Probably not. Will you be able to view it in full quality, unrendered? Probably not. You probably have to have it in the lesser quality setting, but you'll still be able to get by. I mean, I edited video, like I said, on the MacBook for years.
I mean, I did it on a MacBook Air in like 2013. I remember on a pirated Final Cut Pro, way back in the day, when that was a thing. But yeah, I mean, I think the MacBook Neo will be able to do everything that you would want your laptop to do. It'll just be certain instances where, yeah, I mean, the name of the game is like speed and efficiency. So like other computers will be able to do it better. But I think the MacBook Neo will surprise us in terms of how much it will be able to do.
Yeah, and like. Make no mistake, like there's going to be limitations. There are going to be limitations, even with just from a I/O standpoint. There are limitations. Like we don't have Thunderbolt, so you're not going to be able to, like, working from an SSD with USB 3. You're going to have some bottlenecks there if you're working with really high quality footage, like high quality 6K, 8K footage. Probably not going to be the most ideal experience there, especially given the fact that there's a limited amount of storage on the device itself. So it's not like you have a ton of super fast storage internally. So you're going to get 256 or 512. That's it. Well, I don't know about you, but my videos generally are going to be larger. Just the library alone is going to be larger than 512 gigabytes. So I am definitely going to have to use an external drive. And there's going to be bottlenecks there for certain types of video workflows just based off the controller alone.
Yeah. So I mean, let's see. I'm excited to see what the experience is going to be like, both on a hardware standpoint, but then also with Mac OS. See what it's like in people's flow. Like I think everybody in college is going to have one of these. High schools are going to have one of these. Like you said, people who just want something a running gun, throw around thing that just don't want an iPad. They still want to be able to sit down and type and have a Mac OS experience, but just cheaper and on the go. I think this MacBook Neo is gonna sell a lot. I think
it will too. And all right. So we know that the iPhone 16 Pro, and I feel like I'm talking way too much, so apologize. But
well, it's a good thing. It's a podcast. You know?
The iPhone 16 Pro has 8 gigabytes of RAM, right? So that is why this is limited to just a hard cutoff of 8 gigabytes of RAM. Therein lies one of the biggest bottlenecks that you're going to have when working with video or any multitasking or anything like that, because you're going to be paging out to storage pretty quickly. And you have a limited amount of storage at that. So you're probably going to see, you're running a whole bunch of apps, that out of memory error, you're going to be seeing that on your screen more times than you would probably like to see it if you go crazy with this thing. If you keep it within a normal use case, it'll be fine. But if you're trying to multitask while editing Final Cut Pro, I can imagine you running into some memory restrictions pretty quickly.
Oh, of course. I can see that too. So, I mean, we'll tread lightly and see what those limitations are, because I'm curious. And that's another, you mentioned the SSDs internally. They are technically slower than the ones on the MacBook Air as well, so that's another little compromise that they made, I think. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I think it's cool. Apple's bringing out something brand new. More people are going to get their hands on it. It's something interesting that Apple's doing that they haven't done before, giving us a laptop at this price point with this much capability. And I think it's just part of their master plan of everything just kind of converging into one. Like, these chipsets are amazing for what they do, and they just keep getting better and better. And it's amazing that an iPhone chipset from a year ago is going to be enough to power Mac OS in a full-fledged version of it. It's not like a Mac OS Lite. So Apple's in a good spot where more and more people are going to get into the Apple ecosystem and just understand what this walled garden is all about. And then Apple, it's just going to have, I think we're going to get to the point where it's all going to be one operating system, and we're going to pick our price point of hardware and go from there. That's what it's going to get down to.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. It's like, it's not even so much the specs, or it's just interesting, and I'm extremely interested. Like, it's the most interesting thing that the Apple's done in a very, very long time, and I think that is the appeal of the MacBook Neo for someone like me who doesn't need a MacBook Neo. It's just interesting, and I think a lot of the tech community is just interested in what this thing has to offer, what it's capable of, what it's not capable of. So we look forward to next week for sure.
Yeah, I picked one up in, I think, the pink color. Honestly,
sweet.
I'm curious to see what it looks like on camera. And then, Apple released a bunch of other stuff too, but not as exciting. 17E, M4 iPad Air, Studio displays, the M4 or M5 Pro and M5 Max and MacBook Pro. So there's a lot that Apple did this week that, we'll be covering and seeing what's worth it and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you already have done a great job this week. I mean, check out Fernando's videos. He's walked through all the different releases, all the various comparisons and changes, what you should buy, what you shouldn't buy. Definitely check them out. We'll have them linked down below. And also, if you want to talk to us, leave a comment. We'll try to respond to it. And then also, we have the email address overtime@9to5mac.com. Holla at us.
Yeah, shoot us an email. Ask us some questions. Ask us about the Neo and the 17E and budget stuff and whatever you guys want. We're happy to answer.
For sure. All right, so this time next week, man, we'll be, one of us will be MacBook Neo owners. I might be. We'll see what happens, but we'll have much more to talk about next week for sure.
Let's do it. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.